Has anyone ever told you that you speak really good English for an Indian?
Do you fake your accent or do you make fun of your friends who fake accent?
Are you funnier around people from your own culture as compared to others?
Or are you feeling the serious pressure to get one gora to your brother's wedding?
Hello and welcome back to Any Color You Like, a podcast where we give our feelings, opinions and advice to 20-somethings everywhere. I'm your host, Kritvi and Mahima.
And this is Mahima.
And today we're tapping into a very vulnerable side of our experiences that I honestly did not expect to talk on the podcast so soon. But we were actually having a conversation with Ragvi, our younger sister, marketing manager and general light of our lives. And she has moved to London recently. She's been working at Amazon and she's our cool little Gen Z kid. According to Mahima, she's one of the coolest people she knows. So she's a pretty cool kid. And we were talking on one Sunday and she called us and she's like, I realized something this week in office that I'm very funny. I'm funny, I'm interesting, but I'm only funny around people that are Indian. When I realize in front of my colleagues, I'm somehow trying too hard, or I don't feel like I can fully be myself, and I'm not truly able to understand why. And that actually got me and Mahima really thinking, because both of us have lived outside of India for a considerable amount of time. Mahima and I met in college, where we spent 4 years in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, West Lafayette, completely red state. And then Mahima moved to Belgium. So we've had our fair share of experiences with people of color, white people across the world. And to be honest, navigating interracial relationships and friendships has been pretty difficult, if not complicated. So we wanted to take this episode to really dig deep into why that happens and how we can move forward from it.
So in this episode, we're going to be dividing the podcast into 3 different sections. And the first section is going to be the phenomena of code switching. That ties back to all the fake accent and trying harder around non-Indians. And then in the second section, we will be digging deeper into why do we do it? Where does it stem from? And in the last section, we'll be, because we are just nice people, you know that, we're going to be giving our personal experience example and how to deal with navigating between all these interracial relationships and just how to really live in the world which is so diverse and so globally connected at this point.
And I must admit, I am notorious for faking my accent here and there, which interestingly, I have thought about a lot, especially if I'm a few drinks down. And this only happens in America. When I'm in India, it never happens. But even in America, when I'm just around Indian people, sometimes this wannabe accent comes out of me, which I don't understand why, and I've been made a lot of fun of, and I've really sat down with myself thinking, like, that's cheap. Like, why would you want to do that? So today, that's why we preface by saying this is a very vulnerable conversation, and I must admit that it may not be relatable 100% to you. You may have some really, really good international friends. You may have some really, really good American friends, but in this episode, I feel we will cover certain topics that apply to international or students or people of color everywhere. So today in this episode, we are unpacking the fake accents that we love to make so much fun of. Really decode where they come from. We want to talk about why do Indians stick to each other, so much so that I have a group chat, Mahima. It's literally called US Jaake Bhi Indian Dost Banai. Like, that's how much we know it's looked down upon. Like, our friends back in India will always be like, oh, tere gore dost nahi hai. Like, it's a thing, like a thing that you want to achieve when you go out, right? And so, also tapping into why Ragvi felt pressurized in being herself in front of other people. And I think for me, a very important question is the need to impress Americans, especially white Americans. And interestingly, it's not just our own experiences that aligned with this. It's research also, which I will give to Mahima, because wo science
So the crazy thing is that once we started doing more research on this episode, we were like, oh shit, this is just not like a personal experience of me or my friend or something. So there was a study done by the National Communication Association Society, which estimated about 40% of foreign students in America do not have close American friends.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy because India, like we both went to Purdue, and that was basically 50% Indians. It was literally you could hear Channa Meria in Chauncey Square at any given time. It was like so. It's just such a crazy fact that international students make such a big backbone, like economical backbone of America, and 40% of them do not really feel close to having any American friends.
Yeah. And I also saw another study, Mimes, I can't remember where it was from, but I'll quote it in the description, that even the people that made American friends or, friends outside their culture in their first year, by the fourth year, that friendship had dwindled down or it had just faded away. So close friendships, like you said, did not last that long, even if they existed that long. And this is a very interesting thing to me because, we are in 2023, we're all completely quote unquote globalized, and when we were coming to college, there's this image that you see, right? Like Garden May, there are like 7 people sitting of completely different races and everyone's like having this little picnic and talking to each other. I would say it happened for some people, but I would say it did not happen for most people. So interestingly, this disconnect between people of color and white people and other type of races is very, very apparent in our society. And
so for my personal experience, my first 2 years, I joined sorority. Most of the girls were Americans. I think probably 90% of the girls were American. I think it was me and my another friend, Zainab, who was Turkish. And by the end of that whole sorority experience, the only friend I have from that time is also another international person. And I do not think I live with those girls, but I'm not in contact with anyone. And by the time I graduated college, I just personally like being around Indians.
Yeah. So I think in its entirety, this episode talks about how to navigate these interracial relationships, dig deep as to why these biases come, and also really figure out where Kritvi's fake accent comes from once and for all.
So let me make you feel a little better, Kishi, because it's you just practicing subconsciously something called code switching. And I would like to read the definition of Harvard Business Review. People of color switching or alternating language dialects to successfully navigate interracial interactions and has large implication for their well-being, economical advances, and even physical survival. And this is basically optimizing the comfort of others, the people, the community you're interacting with, in exchange for fair treatment, which is just something we've been subconsciously, conditioned to do.
I think, Mahima, what you said in the end really resonates with me, optimizing comfort of others in exchange for fair treatment. As a communication student, because at the end of the day, the core reason people communicate is for other people to, like you're learning Dutch right now. Why? So your Dutch colleagues can understand you better, you're able to communicate them without those barriers that exist. And a lot of times I feel like, from white people or the race that is in majority or the kya bolte usko, I don't know what the politically correct word is, guys, please, I apologize, but there's the race in power, I guess, in some sense defines how you communicate to them. Okay, for example, when I'm in America, sometimes if I'm talking normally or if I'm giving my name, I'm always met with a what did you say, and I don't have that thick of an accent, so much so that I want to give you a quick example of a classroom experience that I had in a fucking university like University of Southern California. It was a classroom of like 150 people, okay? And I was supposed to come in front of class and give instructions for some sort of activity that we were doing in class. So I went and I'm giving like my instructions, I read them out, and trust me, this time I wasn't quote unquote faking my accent, but I was talking exactly like how I am talking right now, because this is how I normally talk. I would say most people in India also talk like this. And my professor was trying to give a rundown on communication right after I finished speaking, and he said something so crazy. He's like, Kritvi explained you the what's the word? Kya bolte hain yaar? The blank
experiment.
The experiment. Sorry, Kritvi explained the thing you need to do, but if she had explained it in her Indian accent, then you probably wouldn't have understood her completely, which would have hindered your ability to to follow the instructions that she gave. And I just sat there for a second. I'm like, this is my Indian accent, like. And for me, in that moment, that professor told 150 people that when Indian people speak, you will find it hard for them to, you will find it hard to understand them. And these are the small little things that we experience in life that stay in our brains and manifest into different cultural biases as we, talk to our colleagues, as we talk to our friends, as we talk to other people that are not from the same race as us. So it was absolutely insane to me. But anyway, Mahima, to go back to code switching,
bringing it back a little bit closer to home. Recently, we saw that Junior NTR won, and what was the name of the other guy?
Ramcharan.
The Ramcharan, they won Golden Globe for Natu Natu song. And okay, fine, I get it. The song wasn't the best we have in India for whatever reason.
Subjective.
During the speech, I think Junior NTR rolled his tongue and he tried to communicate in American accent. And instead of focusing on him winning Golden Globe, the Twitter and Instagram, all social media was full of just giving him a lot of shit. The trolls are like going crazy. Oh my God, went to America once and rolling an accent and stuff. Which, if you just think about it, was his way of code switching, so that now that he's at a platform so big that so many people around the world can see him, they can understand him simply better.
Yeah.
And I think it was very community. We tend to have something called crab mentality, which is basically an analogy where crabs, when they're put in a bucket and one crab tries to escape the bucket, the other one pulls it down. And we see this a lot. And this is where I think we need to question that, where the code switching is coming from and how it is related to, especially in context of India, because I think it really roots in crab mentality.
Right. So we wanted to take a couple of minutes to, highlight our experiences, illustrate certain things that we've seen happen around us, because like I said, we think that this is a very sensitive but important topic to talk about. So in part 2 and part 3, we've divided this episode in 2 more parts. In part 2, we really dig deep into the conditioning and crab mentality of Indian people to really decode where all of these things are coming from. And in part 3, of course, we give you solutions on how we can actually culturally assimilate in positive ways that, create long-lasting relationships and friendships where we feel comfortable, respected, and I don't need to fake my accent anymore. So we'll see you in part number 2. Okay, cool.